All right, welcome back to the War Room. I'm back here with Karsten to discuss a lot of things today, but it has been a while. We're happy to get back caught up with the motorsports world. So this episode is going to be covering F1 and IndyCar, since we are about to come across what I consider the greatest weekend in motorsports. That is Memorial Day weekend, where in one weekend you get the opening round of motocross, you get Monaco qualifying on Saturday, and then Sunday you wake up to the Monaco Grand Prix in F1. Directly after that, you get the 108th running of the Indianapolis 500. And then right after that, when you're ready to eat more food and pass out, you can do that while you listen to NASCAR in the background with the Coke 600. So it is a phenomenal weekend for motorsports, and we're here to kind of recap a little bit of what's been going on this weekend last, and then preview what's to come. So, yeah, let's, Karsten, what are we going to start first with in regards to F1?
I mean, we've had an exciting 2 weeks with a different winner and some
Thank God.
actual good battling going on, you know?
As a Max Verstappen fan, my only reaction to that, and I mean this with sincerity, is thank God. And that's coming from a Max Verstappen fan. Like, you
Yeah,
just want to see your favorite driver push to his limit. And that's why, you want to see something else happen.
100%. Well, yeah, and if you are a true fan, you want to see him get better, and the only way to do that is he needs some good, solid competition, and that's what we got going on now.
Yep.
And one of these races in the good old US of A, which is exciting to have a good showing for our one of now 3 home races. So yeah, very exciting.
Yeah. So Lando Norris gets the win in
Yep.
very surprising fashion, gets his first ever F1 Grand Prix win. When you saw that, what was your reaction? This definitely came out of nowhere for Lando, and really F1 in general looked like Max was just gonna continue to be Max. And we saw not just Lando but Oscar Piastri show fantastic pace, and we
Yeah.
also, as a result of that, it just looked like Ferrari, because of the fact they went nowhere in regards to upgrading the car. McLaren brought in basically a B-spec car in regards to upgrades that weekend at Miami, and somehow we're able to get them to work in one race weekend, which is crazy. It looks like Ferrari got stagnant, and because of that, they're getting left behind by McLaren as the challenger to Red Bull, or attempt to. So what do you make of Lando Norris getting this first win, and Piastri showing good pace? And I think he had some contact in the middle of the race to kind of set him back a little bit, if I remember correctly. What are your thoughts? Do you think Lando can continue to fight for wins? I mean, that'll kind of come into perspective when we talk about Imola, but long-term outlook, are you liking the steps McLaren have taken to put both Norris and Piastri up at the front?
Yeah, I mean, I want to say at the beginning of the season, I predicted that McLaren was going to be one that came up from behind as the season went on, as they made upgrades to the car. And
Pretty sure you did,
boom,
yeah.
what do you know? Here's what we have. So, I mean, when you've got good drivers to begin with, and then you
Mhm.
can build a car around them that they can use and do well with, you're gonna get a good result. So,
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, obviously, if they don't keep up what they're doing on the back end with the team, you know, the rest of the team that's non-drivers, basically, if those guys can keep doing their thing and um, you know, keep up with making sure the car is what it needs to be, then yeah, I mean, like, Max is not the fastest guy out there right now. Like, he's the most consistent for sure, but as far as like pace goes, I mean, there's guys that are running insanely good laps right now. So,
Yeah, there's a
um,
couple different guys that can throw it down on one lap just as good or sometimes better. I mean, heck, in 2023, we saw Charles Leclerc take a couple poles. Sainz took a pole at one point, I believe.
mhm,
We haven't seen it in regards to one lap pace, complete perfection from Red Bull, and even this season, we still haven't seen that.
yeah,
So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different things that can go on, and I think it gives us some hope of a team finally getting their act together from an engineering perspective. especially going into Imola, seeing the Red Bull struggles throughout the whole race weekend. It looked like, Red Bull was not in the top 3 in practice times in all 3 practices, all kinds of problems. Red Bull was trying to put in a new floor package from what I saw this weekend. So they obviously had some struggles with that, had struggles with tire degradation. And I don't know how Max did what he did, but somehow he managed to get pole by a slim margin over McLaren. I think it was only like a 10th or 2. With Norris and Piastri being 2 and 3. Piastri would be demoted 3 spots from impeding during qualifying, blocking some guys' laps. So that kind of sucked to see him taken out from the second row, but it is what it is. And like I said, it was almost like a letdown because we were like, okay, someone else is going to get pole today. But then in the race, even though Max still got the win, we saw someone do what no one else has been able to do. I'd say, with the exception of, no, we just haven't seen it in like 2 or 3 years. Lando is 6.5 seconds off of Max. We think there's just nothing's going to happen. At this point, Leclerc was catching Norris, and Norris was just sitting there, almost kind of just chilling, letting his tires kind of get back into a window. Leclerc gets within a second of him. Lando remembers he has to go fast, goes fast. It's a good thing to remember, is to go fast. And then all of a sudden, that 6.5 second gap gets down to, a second and a half, in the span of 13 laps. And with 6 to go, he's in striking distance, just a couple tenths out of DRS, trying to walk it down. What was your reaction seeing that play out? Because we haven't seen anyone walk Max down from that kind of gap before. Really in the last 2 years. I can't name another time it's happened.
Yeah, every race pretty much it's been, okay, Max has got a good 5 to 10 second lead, and he just sits on it, makes sure it stays somewhere in there, and he cruises to the finish. And what is it that who was the famous NFL coach? Was it Vince Lombardi? He says, I never lost a game, I just ran out of time.
Yeah, I think it was him. I don't know.
Anyway, whoever it was, maybe it wasn't. I feel like Lando just ran out of time. He didn't lose that race. He ran out of time. If it was, 10, 20 more laps, we might have seen a different winner. So, and every other race, it's like, okay, if we sat here and did this for the next 5 years, these guys run around the track, nobody's catching them. But that one, it's like, hey, something going on here.
No,
this could be good.
It came down to that last lap, and the lap before, the penultimate, as the British like to call it, the second to last lap, as we say over here. He had a little bit of a moment coming out of, I forget what turn. I think it might have been a chicane or something, where he just lost the back end just a little bit. A couple times
he was getting a little swirly.
Behind the dirty air. And don't get me started on the fact that we still have these really, really ridiculous dirty air systems and cars having problems following in corners because we decided to go backwards, largely thanks to Mercedes complaining and not fixing their car in 2022. You guys have heard me rant about that for 12 minutes straight, so I'm not going to speak about that anymore, but just know I'm still pissed about it. Anywho, finding the dirty air, got loose a couple times, but that second to last lap, if he didn't get loose, he was 0.7 from getting DRS on the main straight on the final lap, going into the final lap, which is really where he needed to make a run. That's your best spot to make a run and actually throw it down the inside, or try to stick it around the outside and then get the inside in the chicane after turn 1. And unfortunately, 700s off from getting DRS. And in that straightaway, he got it down to 0.7 just from the draft, just from the slipstream. So it's like, man, when you see that, he's got the pace. Red Bull was really struggling with the tire wear. Max was on the radio several times saying, like, I've got no grip left. And Max, and keep in mind, this is why a large amount of this, yes, Red Bull has a fantastic car for the last 2 years, but if you want to see what this kind of domination looks like in regards to the driver versus the car and comparing it to someone like Mercedes, in this race, Max wins. His teammate is in 8th, just chilling. Perez was just nowhere, That car, this was not the best spot for that car. They were struggling the whole week. Max somehow wins. His teammate is in 8th or whatever, and was struggling the whole weekend. I mean, and I believe got beat by both Mercedes as well. So, I mean, just dadgum. I mean, that the amount Max can extract from that car is ridiculous. But yeah, I mean, Lando was 1 lap away from winning it. I think he was within 6 or 7 tenths going into the main straight on the final lap crossing the finish line. You've got that. You've got a shot at throwing one down the inside or trying to stick around the outside. Yeah, 1 lap away. Lando, after the race, said that honestly they lost that race by being too slow too early, having too big of a gap to make up at the end. I don't know if that was because they were trying to be too conservative on the early stints of the tires, or it was just a pure lack of pace on the softer compounds. I'm not sure. In other news, I don't know if you checked recently. This is kind of under the radar. Alpine still sucks. They're still terrible. They still can't qualify. I don't even know if they've scored a point. I think they have scored a point or two, but they're getting outdone by Haas and Racing Bulls, and they're too busy battling Kick Sauber for who's the cringiest team right now. Williams is also I've heard reports that the Williams car is having all kinds of problems because it's massively overweight. So there's that. So I'm hoping. I mean, Albon had all kinds of trouble during this race, penalties and stuff like that. So they had no shot at gaining points because Logan Sargent still can't figure it out, unfortunately. Yeah. Other than that, not much else to take away from these last 2 weeks. I mean, very exciting, very, very exciting to see McLaren kind of step back in to the batter's box here and actually start throwing some punches as well. And hopefully we continue to see more parity going forward. But we talked about, next weekend being the greatest weekend in motorsports. And one of those crown jewels, if not called the crown jewel of races, would be Monaco. And that is next Sunday. And we know a lot about Monaco, how tight it is for these modern F1 cars that are so huge, how little room there is to pass. But how important your 1 lap pace is at this track, because qualifying is everything. It's so hard to battle for the lead here. Strategy, as we found out in 2022, not screwing over your lead driver at Ferrari is very important. Highly don't recommend it. So we can't spend too much time on this because there really isn't too much to discuss in regards to predictions, because it all comes down to qualifying and then executing your strategy, right? And really the discussion is who can put it on pole, who has the best 1 lap pace. And a couple of names come to my mind, but I want to hear your thoughts first. Who do you think is a huge threat to get the pole outside of Max, of course? I guess the better question is, who is a threat to compete with Max for the pole? And therefore, if you convert that, go on and win. So who are some of your guys that you think that can go up there and compete?
I would have to say it's got to be Lando or Leclerc. First, they've been performing well the last couple of weeks, and I mean, let's take a look at history for a second here, okay? Let me give you boys a lesson. All right.
Okay.
Number 1 winningest team at Monaco, McLaren. 15 wins.
I did not know that. I would have thought Ferrari, but no.
No. Ferrari's in second place. Second place with 10 wins. Yeah. Both teams, it's been a while since they've won. Okay. McLaren, not since 08. All right.
Ferrari, did Ferrari win one with Vettel?
That would have been 2017. Was he on that team in 2017?
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
So it would have been either Vettel or maybe Raikkonen at that time. I can't remember.
And since before that, it wasn't since 2001, which wouldn't that have been?
That would have been Schumacher.
Schumacher? Yeah.
Yep.
So both teams are well overdue for a Monaco win. Okay.
Absolutely.
Now I don't know if we're going to see a win, but I would say the last 2 weeks are a great indication that we might.
Mm-hmm.
It's looking better. Yeah, it's looking better than it has
Mm-hmm.
in the last couple of years. So that would be my, if I had to put 2 up there, and then just some crazy out of nowhere as a third pick, I'm throwing the dice. Okay. George Russell.
Really?
Yeah, you know what? Because it would be just incredible if it happened. It won't,
So
but it'd be incredible.
are you saying that because like George Russell is going to like hijack Perez's Red Bull and then drive that, or is he still going to be driving the Mercedes tractor?
I think we're going to have a pile up. It's going to have to be a pile up.
Okay.
It's going to have to be. I'm talking the tunnel is clogged with cars faster than his. Okay, and he is behind all of them, and he's like, "What are you? What are y'all doing?
You can't park there, mate."
What are y'all having tea? And they all get tractored off. They pick him up with a forklift, and he cruises through.
Okay.
Hey, if that happened,
British Woody from Toy Story, book it. Sleeper pick. Okay. I've only got 2 to add. To that list.
2 to add.
Yep, 2
really?
to add. 2 to add, because I agree with everyone else that you mentioned. I got 2 to add.
Okay. All right.
I would say Piastri, but I think he's always a step behind Norris. So I think Piastri will be a guy that can work his way in the top 5, but I don't see him getting the pole. Definitely a podium threat, though, with how good McLaren's looked. I would be surprised if I saw like a top 3 of 2 McLarens and 1 Red Bull. But I also wouldn't be surprised to see a
McLaren
Ferrari
2-3.
Yep.
Yeah, McLaren 2-3 is not outside the question at this point.
I mean, that's what we saw at Imola, right? So,
yeah.
Now, I think someone that definitely, I mean, I 100% agree with the Leclerc pick, because Leclerc is capable of putting a Williams on pole with how good his 1-lap pace is. I mean, he could drag that overweight thing, or I don't know if he could put an Alpine on pole.
Wait. Did you say a Williams on pole?
Leclerc could do it. He would fall back all the way to last.
Okay.
But he could put it on pole. Okay. That's how good his 1-lap pace is. He can drag that thing upwards. Now I don't know if he could put an Alpine on pole, because that thing is just, I mean, there's a tractor and then there's like that thing. That's like a tractor that's missing like a catalytic converter. I don't know what's going on with that Alpine. I'm just going to continue to roast them until they get better, or once they get half their engineering team back.
They have a point.
Ridiculous. 1.
They have
1, 2.
It's 1.
Okay.
It's not 0. Yeah, they're competing. Come on now. It's better than Williams in the green.
Williams has more points than them, bro.
No.
Williams has got points.
No.
Albon's put it in there. They have it? Am I on crack?
Yes, you're cracked
There's no
up,
way.
brother.
I'm pretty sure Albon's put it up there.
He has not. 0. They're dropping. They're sitting on a goose egg.
No. Oh my God, you're right.
Yeah. I got the stats, brother.
You got, bro.
And what they don't have is points.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I stand corrected. Your Honor, I'd like to retract my previous statement.
That's okay. We've all been wrong before.
But I will say, I think aside from that points, I think until that point's finished, they were getting diced by Albon.
Yeah, and
Albon was beating them at pretty much every race except for that one. And my guess is if they didn't have that points finish, the order would be Williams, Alpine, then Kick Sauber, because for most of the races, apparently except the one, Alpine has been battling Kick Sauber for the reward of who's the dumbest team of the year. I mean, those two are so bad that Ferrari's not even in the picture this year. Like, they make Ferrari look like sound, competent strategists, which this year they've been better, but still, it's Ferrari. They're going to find a way to make something dramatic and, all that stuff. But Kick Sauber, it took them like 3 races to figure out how to do a pit stop in under 30 seconds. Now, and Alpine just decided to bring in a car that was slower than last year. They made their car. They're the only team that had a car that in qualifying had a slower 1-lap pace than last year. Like, just could not figure it out. half their engineering team left. Otmar's gone. I mean, like it's just all kinds of a crap show over there. And tell you what, Pierre Gasly and Ocon are not happy, bro. They ain't happy. But yeah, let me get back to my point.
That's okay. Yeah,
because
sorry,
I'm very, very good at getting distracted.
And to be fair, 1 point is really similar to no points.
Exactly.
It rounds down to 0 easier than it rounds up to like 5.
You got to be 5 and above to round up. So
yeah, it's based.
Honestly, round them down to 0. You know what? They are net 0 in my book. Because I mean, if you take into account how piss poor they are in all the rest of the races, that should bring that down to like a 0.4 of a point, and that definitely rounds down to 0. So
and we'll give that point to Haas, and then I'll have 8.
Yeah, no, give it to Williams just for trying. Good old.
You know what? You're right.
Try.
Let's change it. Williams has 1 point. Alpine has 0. I like that better.
Specifically, Logan Sargent has 1 point,
yes.
Honorary point. Yep. Anywho, so my other sleepers, Carlos Sainz, because the guy had a hot start to the season, has shown great pace and even out. I think he even out qualified Leclerc this season. But also, I mean, we also saw him out qualify Leclerc multiple times last season too. So he has the potential to always be great and put himself up there. I would also definitely not sleep on the man who had pole stolen to him by 1/100th of a second last year at Monaco, and that is Fernando Alonso. Now, obviously, last year, different Aston Martin car that had 5 podiums in the first 6 races, Monaco included. But still, I mean, that car has shown some decent pace this year. They've had a terrible weekend at Imola, so they're going to be looking to rebound. But don't sleep on Alonso, brother. That freaking wise old fox can sneak it in there. We saw him almost do it last season.
I don't hate those picks. I think those are very good picks. I think those. I mean, again, with us having seen now that Max can be beaten, it can happen.
Yep.
Without him crashing.
Or racing at what's the place that Sainz won last year? Singapore.
Yeah. And not having a mechanical. That's another.
Yep. Australia.
So let's take those off the table.
Into account. Yep. Oh yeah, off the table.
And right, like okay, that didn't happen. This was straight up. This was just racing.
Yep.
I mean, things start to get a lot more interesting. And
especially with the fact that Monaco comes down to qualifying, and it's a lot easier when you can win a race off a 1-lap pace. I mean, we've seen so many times Leclerc can have the time of his life, throw down a one lapper. But apparently he has some kind of curse at Monaco, so we didn't factor that in. So we may have to take Leclerc off the contention list, even if he gets pole, because he's cursed.
I think that's actually 100% correct.
Yeah.
Whose car was it? Was it Nicky's car that he crashed? Niki Lauda's car?
Yes, he did that. And that same year in 2022, he got pole, right? And Ferrari had the 1-2.
His transmission broke, wasn't it?
Yep.
Yeah. Off the list. I cancel that. He's
out. Or did he lose the transmission in 21? It might have been 21. Because 2022 was a strategy issue. Yeah. So it was 21 where he lost the transmission. 2022 where he the strategy issue of a lifetime where they boxed Sainz and they put him in behind and double stacked him. 2023 was, I think he was just a non-factor. Oh yeah, it was Aston Martin and Red Bull duking it out, and Ferrari was a non-factor. So, but yeah, Leclerc very much cursed at Monaco, which is terrible because he was born in Monaco, so he's technically
it's
resident. It's pretty bad. So take him off. Unfortunately, we want it to happen. I would love to see him win his home race. Like it would go crazy.
Okay, can confirm transmission issue was
2021.
Yeah.
Look, there we go. It took a minute.
Very nice.
We got it. Okay,
and
so
the following year and finished 4th. So yeah, I mean he's
cursed.
He's off the list.
Yep.
He's off the list.
No, he's off.
Sorry,
he's off. We'll take him off. We'll put Piastri back in. You're in, kid.
Yes.
You're off the bench. You're back in. Go get pole.
Leclerc's off. Piastri's in.
Yep.
Sainz, And who knows if this extends to like being a complete Ferrari thing. Because again, Ferrari, besides 2017, hasn't won since 01, dude, when they had one of the greatest of all time. You have to have an absolute GOAT on your team
If
to
I
win.
wasn't
And
a
that's kind of how
degenerate
Monaco
gambler,
is.
yeah, if I was a degenerate gambler, I would just continue to bet as much money as I can on for like if there was a way to bet for a Ferrari bidding it, like just not like Ferrari finishing in a certain order, but just Ferrari to find a way to screw it. I would just keep slamming it.
Yeah.
Now they're getting better with Fred Vasseur. He's turned that team around, getting better strategists in, better pit crews in. But it's just there's just that curse per se, and it's not a always because they have their moments, right? They're like the Dallas Cowboys. They're good enough for you to always think it's their year, and then just I mean, that's why I can only like Ferrari and the Dallas Cowboys. I can only like them. I can't fully invest my heart and soul into them like I do other teams.
Yeah.
Because I'm a Malcolm Stewart fan. I'm a Chase Sexton fan. I'm a Bubba Wallace fan in NASCAR. I'm a Joseph Newgarden fan in IndyCar. I've got enough mental problems right now.
You're an
Those are just
A&M
hormones.
fan?
I'm an Aggie football fan. That alone could put me in a psych ward. Okay, I mean, and then you got to factor in Houston sports, all of Houston sports. Now it's all three because the Astros they can't seem to pitch anything but meatballs at the moment. We're not going to go down there. Houston Texans always. I mean, better last season, but they always have their dramatics. Houston Rockets, they're getting there, but I mean, I still have nightmares about Game 7 in Golden State in 2017. Okay, I got too much with Houston sports to begin with in Aggie football. Yeah, and all this other stuff. It's for that reason I can't take on a fandom and support, full support of the Cowboys and Ferrari. I like them both. I want them to be great. I want them to actually have a year where it's their year whenever my teams are out of it. I don't know what's going to happen, though. So, yeah, that kind of wraps up Monaco and the summary of my mental health from sports. And that brings us.
I think you're too susceptible to the hype. You know,
Yep.
not
the hype, so not bad. The hype. It's the hope.
Yes,
I have an overdose of hopium.
Yes, and
because everyone I listed is on the outside looking in.
And those are all in every single one of their sports, and each team and individual, they all have like coming into the season, it's like they're contenders. And even toward the end of the season, like you get to the playoffs and it's like, hey, they're contenders. Mm-hmm. And then it just all falls apart. Yep. You know?
I still have nightmares about Malcolm going down when he was leading Anaheim. Not leading, about to get back into the lead of Anaheim. I've never thrown a TV remote so far than that race in 2023. But yeah, it's fine. I'm fine.
Pro at a sport and I find out you're a fan of me, I'm just gonna retire right then,
dude.
Right then
on the spot, you gotta.
I'm like, you know what? I'm never gonna get a championship. Kohl is a fan of me.
Yep,
it's never gonna happen.
Let's not even talk about the fact that Malcolm tore literally every ligament in his knee last year. After I predicted for him to be a title contender, so there's that.
Yeah, there should be an extra insurance premium for you being a fan of somebody. It's like, wow, Kohl's a fan. Yeah, your insurance just tripled, bud.
Yep. You ain't making it past 30, brother. Yep.
No.
Okay, so that wraps up F1 for now. We'll be back at that in a couple of weeks, but that's kind of our preview for Monaco per se. And now let's get into what is referred to as the greatest spectacle in racing. This will be Sunday at 11 following the conclusion of the F1 Monaco Grand Prix. That is the Indy 500, guys. And we've yet to talk about IndyCar on this channel. And that's just because we've barely had time to cover F1 and Supercross half the time. So IndyCar, for those of you that don't know, it's the domestic open wheel series for America. We have athletes from all over the world that compete, a lot of New Zealanders, Australians that compete, a lot of guys from the F1 series like Marcus Ericsson that came in, Alexander Rossi, who had a cup of tea with F1, a lot of guys from F2 like Callum Ilott. For the road courses so far this season, Teo Porcher, last year's F2 champion, come in. He's been racing for the number 6 of Aero McLaren. A lot of great talent. And the one thing I do hate about IndyCar is how terrible their marketing is, because the only race they advertise and market to any good degree is this one, the Indy 500, which it is the greatest race. It is the greatest spectacle in racing. 500-mile oval track where these guys will be going 235 miles an hour in sixth gear, and they just hold it wide open and pray to God it holds and doesn't go up the wall. One of the most dangerous races as well, but also one of the most unpredictable. Last year's was amazing. There was like 5 different guys that could have won it at one time, all kind of different storylines. Heck, we even had a rookie last year that almost won it in Santino Ferrucci, another guy from the F2 series. A little more controversial background with the F2 series. Do your homework on that. But he's matured a little bit now, so that's cool. Yeah, so a really, really cool event. And in the IndyCar series, they do about, it's not like NASCAR where they do like 80% ovals and 20% road courses and street circuits. It's actually the opposite. It's a 17 race series, and I think about 30% of that is ovals. This being one of them. The rest is road courses and street circuits like F1. So the Indy 500 will be the first oval race of the season. And for those that don't know, they will use different cars, as they call them, the speedway setups of these cars that feature a way smaller low drag rear wing, very, very skinny compared to their road course and street circuit wings, because they are trying to minimize the amount of drag and for the speedway setup. So these guys are throwing it down these high G turns with very, very little downforce. And like I said, just praying it holds. So a lot to talk about this weekend as of today, which is Sunday, the 19th. Today wrapped up the conclusion of qualifying, and qualifying for the Indy 500 is not like how it is in a regular F1 race or even a regular IndyCar race, to where everyone's on the track at the same time. You do it the day before the race. Everyone's doing their fastest lap time. No, in Indy 500 says you have 34 people competing for 33 spots. It takes a whole weekend to sort the grid out. The way that works, you have day one on Saturday after 6 free practice sessions, 6, because it takes that much practice to run this course. You're going to have all 34 cars qualify on Saturday in a 6.5-hour qualification session where everyone gets one run. You do your one run that starts in the morning in a randomized order. Then you come through. If you like your time and it's really good, you can just sit out if you're that good. And if you don't, then you have 2 choices. You can keep your current time going to lane 2, and whatever you get, if it's better than your current, you get to keep it. But if not, no harm, no foul. You don't lose your time. If you're on the outside of the top 30 looking in, trying to not go to bump day, which I'll explain what that is in a minute, you can just keep going in lane 1, or even if you want to take away your time from the top 30, keep going in lane 1, keep getting more runs in, and you have priority over lane 2. So a lot of guys that are on the outside looking in of making the show, they will just keep going in lane 1, keep getting priority, keep making runs. And another difference in this kind of qualifying session that makes it so crazy is you're not being timed over one lap. They actually measure you over your average miles per hour over the course of 4 laps, back to back to back. And you have to be, especially with the high temp of the track, you're constantly fighting tire degradation as you go. So someone can throw down a 233.3 miles per hour first lap. Their next lap, half a mile an hour off. Next lap, 2/10 more of a mile an hour off, and you're trying to hold on to it by that 4th lap. So it makes for a lot of really, really cool drama. This is my first time watching the full qualifying series of the weekend, and I didn't even know how interested I would be on day 1. Sticking it out for pretty much the full 6.5 hours, and man, it was awesome. A lot of cool stuff to go through. And then to kind of just finish summarizing the qualification process, in day 1, your top 12, or what's considered the fast 12, they get to go to day 2, in which those 12 guys will get to compete for the pole. And then positions 13 through 30 are locked in for the show, and their grid order is finalized. Everyone else that's left after that has to go to bump day, in which 4 people go in a last chance qualifier between the first and second qualifying sessions for the fast 12. And they throw down heaters for an hour, and at the end of that session, one person doesn't get to race. They are out. They are knocked out. So it's pretty crazy. A lot of stuff went down. So let's finally get into it now that I'm done monologuing. Day 1, a couple of notes. The biggest news for this series is that NASCAR phenom, super, super popular driver Kyle Larson Will be the first driver in I don't know how many years that they'll be doing the quote double, in which he'll be racing NASCAR's Coke 600 later that day. I think it's at like 3 p.m., 4 p.m., whatever, in the NASCAR Cup Series. But he will also be racing the Indy 500. It's also his first time behind the wheel of an Indy car. He's not doing any other road courses, nothing else to get used to what an Indy car, open wheel car is going to feel like. He is literally jumping into one of the hardest races and most dangerous races in the world. If it's definitely the most dangerous race in the world. It's the most dangerous oval, highest speeds you're going to be facing. It's insane. So he is doing the double, and we'll get into how he did, which is spoiler alert, very, very, very good. A couple other notes before we get into the qualifying is Marcus Ericsson, who won the Indy 500 2 years ago and got second in last year's Indy 500, who got passed in the last lap by Joseph Newgarden, which was insane. He had a massive crash in free practice. I believe it was number 4 or number 5 that he had a massive crash, pretty much totaled that car. And, your first argument is, well, he's got a backup car. He does. The thing is, what a lot of people don't know is it takes 6 to 12 months to develop these speedway cars. A lot of testing, a lot of tweaks. So to try to rebuild that overnight is almost impossible. Even if you get it rebuilt, that's great. But getting it trimmed for literally the fastest and most no room for error speedway on the planet is next to impossible. So he had massive struggles. He did not get, the guy who won this thing 2 years ago could not get a average mile an hour time of over 230.6. And most of the guys that qualified were in the 231.1s. And then on the high end, the fast 12 were hovering around the 232s and 233s on their averages. So he was nowhere near the pace, and he was one of the 4 that had to go to bump day, which was a shocker. This is a guy that won it 2 years ago and usually is always in it, and he was predicted as someone that would be in the fast 12. So huge upset there. And then the story of the day on day one was Rinus VeeKay, a guy that was another guy that was predicted to be in the fast 12. In his early morning run, which your first run before you go to the lane selection is really important, because that's when you have the lowest amount of track temperature, meaning your fall off from the tire degradation is way less significant, right? So usually a lot of guys are able to get their best time in the morning, and in the afternoon they're just trying to gamble if they can get a cloud, or if there's just overcast to where you can get better times in, or you're just trying to just do something better. It's very, very tough to get faster times in the afternoon, but it was done a lot. And in his morning run, Rinus VeeKay completely bended into the wall, coming off of turn 1, I believe. And it took them 3.5 hours to rebuild that car. It was not totaled like Marcus Ericsson's, but it took them 3.5 hours to get that thing rebuilt. He puts down a lap time in the late afternoon with like an hour to go that put him in the mid-20s. So he was like at least confirmed in the show. But this dude got a set of cojones on him. He said, "That's BS. I know we can do better. We need to make a tweak on the car. We're going to line this thing up with 2 minutes to go, and we're going to go into lane 1." And like I said, if you go into lane 1, your time is withdrawn. So whatever run you make coming off of lane 1 is where you sit. So if you were in the mid-20s and you were going to be making the show, but you go to lane 1 because you can go faster and you don't set a time or a good time in the top 30, you're out. You're going to bump day. Huge gamble for this guy. And the dude threw down an absolute heater. No one thought he could make the top 12. They were just wondering if he could make the higher up in the mid-20s, maybe even in the teens. Dude made the fast 12 and knocked out Andretti's one of their favorites to win in Colton Herta, who was sitting at 12th and thought he was sitting pretty, thought there was no way that VeeKay was going to be able to do that on a repaired car. And he knocks out one of the favorites to make the fast 6 and potentially get the pole. Huge issue there. And then the big story was Team Penske, who has 3 cars, in day 1 went 1, 2, and 3 with Will Power, Scott McLaughlin, Joseph Newgarden. All of them having average mile an hours of 233 or higher, which was insane. So yeah, lots to talk about there. And then Kyle Larson once again, doing the double in his rookie debut on day one qualifying, puts himself in the fast 12, which was unheard of. Keep in mind, he is doing this in a debut partnership between NASCAR's Hendrick Motorsports and IndyCar's Aero McLaren, which is really, really cool. So two different teams coming together to make the double work. Really, really cool to see. And then he puts it in the fast 12 on day one. Really, really cool to see. And then the 4 people not knocked out, sent to bump day with Catherine Ledge, Marcus Ericsson, as we discussed, Graham Rahal, who was having all kinds of issues. He's the son of the very, very famous IndyCar Bobby Rahal. And then the rookie Nolan Siegel, who's a 19-year-old being thrown on a very budget team. I felt bad for this kid. He's one of the IndyCar NTT series, like the kind of like the F2 for IndyCar. He's one of their up and coming stars. I think he's in the top 2 in points or top 3 in points in that series. He was also sent to bump day. He also had a crash in the middle of the week and was struggling big time. And like I said, he's on a car that has about as much sponsors on it as McLaren did when Fernando Alonso joined them. I mean, it was just straight paint on that car. No sponsors. I mean,
yeah,
I guess he had some sponsors, but like it was like that. Okay. His car and Fernando Alonso's car and McLaren look like the My Team car when you're level 1, just like
some barren wasteland.
Pretty much just paint and like the team name as the sponsor, pretty much. So I felt bad for that kid. The Fast 12 consisted of Scott McLaughlin, Will Power, Joseph Newgarden, Felix Rosenquist. That's always a funny one to say. Kyle Kirkwood, Alexander Rossi, another former F1 guy. Kyle Larson, once again, the guy doing the double. Santino Ferrucci, Renus VK, Pato O'Ward, Takuma Sato, and Ryan Hunter-Ray, who is, for whatever reason, nicknamed Captain America. I still haven't figured out why that's the case, but for whatever reason, he's nicknamed Captain America. So that's kind of the summary of day one. So my question to you from that is just, I know I just had to monologue through that because there's just a lot to get through, and I know you're still kind of new to getting into the Indy 500 in general. What kind of stuck out to you the most in regards to the storylines? Is it hearing that the former champion 2 years ago, Marcus Ericsson, having to go to bump day and not qualifying in the top 30? Is it hearing that Kyle Larson, a rookie coming over from NASCAR, puts it in the fast 12? Is it hearing the fact that Renus VK crashes it in his first run where it's the most optimal to qualify, gets in the mid-20s, and then says, like kind of just Bill O'Reilly's it and said, screw it, we'll do it live, and then risks it all and puts himself in the fast 12? What kind of, and you also can't forget that one team puts all 3 of their cars in the top 3 on day one. So what sticks out most to you? What do you think is the biggest anomaly that you're hearing here?
I really like the Renus VK story. I think that's incredible. I love whenever people have the confidence in themselves and what they can do, even though maybe the result hasn't been there yet. He still knows within himself, like, I know what I got, and he goes out and does it. I think that's awesome. And I think that, maybe a guy is really good last year, really good this year. Maybe next, from one year to next, you never know what's going to happen with in racing, especially because there's one driver, but like it's a team sport, and so there could be something going on behind the scenes with the team where he's not performing as well. Very possible. So that's not as surprising, but I think that there is definitely a lot of excitement going on here. I'm not really into IndyCar, haven't watched it much, but I'm starting to get excited about this. And Santino Ferrucci, his livery is incredible.
Amazing.
This
is the second year in a row he's running this, and he as a rookie in the Indy 500, it was his second year, I think, running IndyCar, but it was his first time running the Indy 500 because a lot of times, especially if you're a guy coming from the Formula support system, you're not running ovals, so they'll sit you out like they did with Roman Grosjean and Marcus Ericsson for a little bit, and like, hey, we're going to put you on some other ovals, have you do some testing, get used to this because it's different. But Ferrucci in his debut in the Indy 500 had a shot to win it. Was led a couple laps, was in the top 3 in the final 2 laps. It was insane. Kid had an amazing debut. He's definitely one to watch.
Yeah. So I'm super excited about it, and yeah, I think it's great. Like you said, there's a lot of awesome storylines going on here. And that's crazy. Like, yeah, there is no, you know, your phone listens to you. Like it knows what you want to see as far as advertising goes. I got nothing for this. And my phone, I go on Instagram, whatever. My For You page is like cars, motorcycles, you know, cool stuff.
Yep.
And this is nowhere to be found.
They have terrible marketing. I mean, like I
Yeah.
said, and there's a running joke on Twitter all the time that the only part of this amazing series that they market is the 500. Like, people don't even know that this series started like a month and a half ago at St. Petersburg, and then round 2 was at one of the most coveted racetracks. It's as historical as Monaco for IndyCar, and that is Long Beach. It's basically the Monaco of IndyCar. It's off the California coast. It's an awesome track. Provides great racing. I mean, honestly, in regards to modern age, it provides better racing, more wheel-to-wheel action than Monaco ever does, and is considered in regards to the history books just as coveted. But they just don't market the rest of the series. I mean, even in their new Netflix series, they even joke themselves. And the series is called 100 Days to Indy, and it's only 6 episodes, and it covers everything, the start of the season and everything leading up to the Indianapolis 500, and then ends, which I find it ironic because they end that series to say, yeah, IndyCar is much more than just Indy 500. We have a 17 race series. Well, then you end that whole series after the 500, and the whole series is, they show the other race wins and what happens in the other races, and it's awesome. And then you end it after the 500. It just blows my mind how there's hardly any marketing and advertising for the other 17, the other 16 races of the 17 race series. That is awesome. And keep in mind, for those of you that get sick of watching domination in F1, because domination in F1 in a formula series where everyone makes their own different interpretations of the cars, domination is more common than not common in Formula One and really motorsports in general. But there's certain sports that allow that just promote more parity and more different results. And IndyCar is one of them, because people forget that IndyCar is an open wheel sport like F1, but it is a mostly spec series. All these cars have to be made the same. They're the same chassis. The only difference between them is how you set them up. So your team matters, your race engineers matter, your strategist matters. And then there's 2 different power units that teams get to select from. It's the Hondas or the Chevys. And I will say, one of the things to note for the Indy 500 is, so far, I mean, literally the entire Fast 6 that we'll get into later was all Chevy power units. There was not as many Honda power units that made the Fast 12. A lot of Honda power teams were struggling on top end speed. Don't know what the deal was. A lot of them couldn't get over 234, and a lot of the Chevys were getting into 237s on the straightaways. Some of them even hitting 241. So a lot of issues with Honda power units so far. I mean, we'll see what happens there. But yeah, I mean, like I said, spec series for the most part, you have a difference, and it comes down to how good your team is, how good your driver is. Provides a lot of different race winners, a lot of different results. Some really, really good championship battles every year. You can count on it. So yeah, I've really grown to love this series over the last 3 years, because it's always been a breath of fresh air to sometimes the domination we see in F1 and just more consistent wheel-to-wheel racing. Not to mention different strategies, because unlike F1, these cars are a little bit smaller because of the fact they can refuel. We talked about that earlier in the pre-show. F1 has not refueled since like 10 years ago or something like that. So the only difference in strategy is not hitting your fuel windows. It's just what tires are you running, how long can you keep the tires alive, right? IndyCar, you've got to manage a bunch of things. You got your tire life, you have different tire compounds you're going to run, and you got to hit the fuel window. So it's and that is a big thing. Sometimes races are 1-0 lost by the fuel margin. And hey, can I push this lap, or no? Am I gonna have to lift and coast the whole lap because I'm running on fumes and just need to make it to the end? That's it. Like I said, there's so much to talk about this series. It's really, really great. I highly encourage you guys watch the rest of what's going on, but this is the crown jewel of that. So getting back into it. So then we go to day 2, right? Like I said, your Fast 12, Scott McLaughlin, Will Power, Joseph Newgarden from Team Penske, Felix Rosenquist, Kyle Kirkwood, Alexander Rossi, Kyle Larson, Santino Ferrucci, Rinus VeeKay, Pato O'Ward, Takuma Sato, and Ryan Hunter-Ray. And then your guys on bump day is Catherine Ledge, Marcus Ericsson, and Graham Rahal, and Nolan Siegel. So starts out with the Fast 12 going and doing their qualifying runs. And in the Fast 12, everyone gets only one run. You get one run, do or die, and you're trying to be in the top 6 to go into the second session and qualify for pole. And the guys that make it out of there, Santino Ferrucci, fantastic run. Alexander Rossi, and then all 3 of Team Penske once again, and they were 1, 2, and 3 on the timesheet. So Joseph Newgarden, Will Power, Scott McLaughlin, and then Alexander Rossi from McLaren. And then the other McLaren car that made the top 6 was the one and only Kyle Larson. Once again, rookie, never done this before, never raced IndyCar, never raced open wheel before. Incredible lap to put him in the top 6. And then in between that, we go to bump day. The last chance qualifier. And it was close, but your 31 through 33, the last row, as they call it, is going to be Catherine Led, Marcus Ericsson, barely. He had some dramatics on his run, as if his weekend wasn't bad enough. His first run, which was once again your first run in this because your engine is the coolest, tire temp is probably the lowest as well. From the track temperature was probably the lowest at that time. He did his first 3 laps, goes across the finish line to start lap 4, gets a radio message from his guys saying, "Hey, white checker," which means he got one more to do, and he lifts going into turn 1. And they thought it was mechanical. They didn't know what was going on. He just straight up forgot he had one more lap to go. This is a guy that won this 2 years ago and was runner-up last year. Just absolute craziness. So he has to go. He has to wait for his engine to cool down. He actually does a couple of laps until he gets waved off to just put more air through the engine and cool the car down. Then goes out and gets one more run at it. And just barely puts himself at 32nd. I mean, barely. Graham Rahal was the guy that was sitting at 3rd that could possibly get bumped, and it came down to the rookie, the 19-year-old Nolan Siegel, trying to put down a lap to bump out Graham Rahal. And he was nowhere close on his first lap, and then his second lap, he realized that he was behind. His first lap was not anywhere near where it should have been. Knew the car wasn't going to do what it's supposed to do, but he just was like, I'm just going to send it, because if I don't, I'd rather go put it in the wall than lift and then have no shot at it. So he just full sent it in the turn 1 on lap 2, and that sucker just completely lost traction, went into the wall, and then that was it. So Nolan Siegel, the young guy, 19-year-old, you will hear his name again, but he was with a crap team and he has a lot to learn. But some encouragement from his practice sessions, other good stuff. But he is the person eliminated. Those are your final 3 in the last roll. And then the Fast 6 rolls off, and Santino Ferrucci goes first, puts down a good lap. Then Kyle Larson throws down a fantastic lap, right? And keep in mind, the Fast 6 are throwing down their laps in reverse order from how they qualified in the Fast 12. So they're all going in reverse order. So Santino goes first since he was 6th, then Kyle, then Rossi, Newgarden, Will Power, Scott McLaughlin. And it was just crazy because they qualified in the order in which they went it, because they got better and better as each guy went, but also the track temp kind of went down a little bit. There was some cloud coverage that came in towards the back half of the Fast 6. But all good lap times. I mean, we're talking within like a 1/10 of a mile an hour between all these guys. But yeah, your first 2 rows is going to be Santino Ferrucci at 6th, Kyle Larson at 5th, Alexander Rossi. He threw down some absolute heaters. He was the first to break into the 234s in his first lap. Talking mile an hour here. He did a great job. His main thing was he had the most drop off between each of these laps. So he went from a 234.062 to a 233.335, then lost another 0.6 of a mile an hour in lap 3, and then another 0.3 in lap 4. So we saw from a lot of guys they can throw down the first heater, and then it was how much of a drop off do you have with each lap. Then you go to Joseph Newgarden, throws down a 234.19, then a 234 even, then a 233.6, and then a 233.4. Will Power basically did the exact same thing, and he beat him out by literally 1/100 of a mile an hour. His average 4-lap average was a 233.917. New Gardens was a 233.909. Insane. And then we go to Scott McLaughlin, who was the last runner. And that dude threw down some absolute heat. Lap 1, 234.5, 4/10 quicker than Will Power's first lap. And his average, his 4-lap average, his qualifying run broke the course record, which was previously set by last year's IndyCar champion, Alex Palou. And his 4-lap average was a 234.220 miles per hour. Absolutely insane. All 3 Team Penske cars, I mean, just looked the most stable, no wiggling or anything. They were just hooked up. I've never seen a team go 1, 2, 3 like that in regards to qualifying. We'll see how they do in the race. And like I said, the main thing that was pretty crazy here is your entire Fast Six, your entire first starting rows are all Team Chevy in regards to power units. Going to be interesting to see how the Honda, if there's some difference in regards to 1-lap pace for the Hondas versus their race pace. But hopefully they can kind of race their way towards the front and see if they can provide some parity in regards to just the engine providers. Not that the engine provider, there's only 2 of them, so it's not like a whole like team battle between the 2 in regards to the power units, but there's a lot of good guys, a lot of really talented dudes that are running Honda power units that like Felix Rosenquist, Takuma Sato, Kyle Kirkwood, who's on Andretti Global, Alex Palou, last year's champion, who got knocked out in the early qualifying, Colton Herta, another Andretti driver. All those guys are potential winners, and we'll get into that in a second. But can't like I said, I cannot overstate how impressed I am with Kyle Larson. I mean, that dude has got to be one of the greatest drivers we've ever seen. To just waltz in as a rookie in this series and put it on row 2 with no experience before. I mean, it's just insane. I'm so happy we're getting to witness this, and that Hendrick and McLaren were able to make that happen. So yeah, that kind of sums up the 2 days. We'll kind of wrap this up in regards to talking about the Indy 500 with just talking about who I think some of the contenders are and some of the sleepers to kind of watch as you watch this 3.5-hour masterpiece unfold next Sunday. Contenders, the obvious ones is everyone in the Fast 12. So literally, everyone starting 1st to 12th, those guys are very, very good, put down very, very good laps. I'd say your most notables of the Fast 12, obviously all 3 of Team Penske, those guys are fantastic. And, we saw last year, McLaren actually had like a whole third of the race where they had Pato O'Ward and somebody else from McLaren doing all kinds of team games where they'd have one guy lead for a couple laps, take the dirty air. Then the guy that was drafting would get to save on fuel. They wouldn't have to. They would kind of just be able to go partial throttle and use the draft to carry them a little bit. And then they would just keep switching every 3 laps so that it was equal between the 2. Really, really cool to see. I can't imagine what kind of team games Team Penske will try to do since they're going to lock out the front row, which hasn't been done in like 20 years. I would look to see how they're going to do that because you have 2 McLarens behind you in row 2 between Alexander Rossi and Kyle Larson. Santino Ferrucci will be all alone in his AJ Foyt Enterprises car, but that he'll be interesting to see. He was phenomenal last year. And then keep in mind, in more team games, another McLaren is right behind. And honestly, he might be the favorite if, depending on how things play out of the McLarens, because Pato was really, really close to winning it last year. He crashed out from making contact with Marcus Ericsson late in the race, but there was a point at which we thought Pato could finally win it. He's kind of like the Charles Leclerc prodigy kind of guy in IndyCar. Similar Colton Herta as well. Very, very young prodigy. Colton Herta actually was the guy that became the youngest race winner in IndyCar a couple of years ago. So a lot of hype behind those 2. Yeah, I'd say those are your most notables. And then outside of that, sleepers, like I said, Colton Herta, you got to look out for him. Alex Palou, he is last year's Indy 500 Series champion, but has yet to win the Indy 500 to my knowledge. Had a shot at winning it last year, but made contact with, I think someone else. I forget who. All I know is they were an idiot He was coming out of his stall and someone else was doing a burnout, lost control, slammed into him and took him out of contention. He had to come back around, do basically a dead lap, repit or get drugged back or whatever it was, make repairs, came back out, still fought his way back to, I think, the top 10, but he was taken out of the contention for the win. Scott Dixon, you've got to watch out for Scott Dixon. 6-time Indy Series champ, one of the winningest drivers of all time, been around the sport for dang near a quarter century. And he won the Indy 500 in 2008. And he's just coming off a round 2 victory in Long Beach when he started from 8th and came back to win it from an amazing strategy. So huge fuel conservation is what won him in the race at Long Beach. I definitely, with him starting, where is he at? 21st. I would look for some kind of crazy strategy for him to come back and win this sucker. Other notables, Helio Castroneves starting 20th. So not the greatest qualifying run, but he is a four-time Indy 500 champion. Got to watch out for him. And then my personal sleeper, the guy that I'm kind of pulling for to come and upset the whole deal, like Newgarden, as you can see by my jersey, is definitely like one of my favorite drivers to watch. Yes, there's a cheating scandal he's wrapped up in with Team Penske. I'll get into that in a minute. It's crazy. But still love the guy. Pulling for him. But Marco Andretti, the third generation Andretti. This will be his 19th Indy 500. He will be starting from 19th, I believe. Yeah, 19th. He'll be he's only racing IndyCar in the Indy 500. He's doing a one-off. This will be his 19th Indy 500. He's a 2-time IndyCar race winner, has not won the 500. But in the Indy 500, he has performed well. Throughout his career in the Indy 500, he has 8 top 10s, 4 top 3s, 8 races in which he led laps, 141 total laps led, and in 2020, he scored the pole position. Like I said, he's yet to convert that into a win, but a lot of good races from him, and I think he could be a guy that if I woke up and missed a race and you told me that he snuck in from a crazy strategy or just from making up a lot of positions on track and won it, I would not be necessarily too shocked because the guy's very talented. Third generation Andretti, he's got a good car behind him, and should have had a better qualifying session, but they had some engine mapping issues, and that's what he said that kind of cost him. Couldn't get out of the mid 231s in his average, so that's kind of what cost him. So yeah, those are my sleepers. Some closing news. Congress is getting involved in the Formula One management versus Andretti whole deal with Andretti not being allowed into F1 in regards to their bid for 2026, still being considered for 2028. But like I said, I knew that there was grounds for a lawsuit or for legal matters to get involved once the FIA approved them, but FOM did not. That standing for Formula One management, of course. Congress is demanding that they give them an actual reason other than the gibberish they put down on their stupid PDF file in regards to why they did not let them in, because of the fact that, just plain and simple, it's looking shady. Because Liberty Media, which is basically Formula One management, it's the owning company to F1, is an American company, so Congress can subpoena them if they want to. They can have people behind it, and they list obvious reasons in regards to it possibly being a violation of the Sherman Antitrust Act. So Congress is starting to step in, and Andretti is bringing everyone to the table here. They're all kinds of pissed. I mean, keep in mind, what FOM did to them is so respectful because they denied Andretti and tried to go behind their back and try to just get Cadillac to enter just themselves as an engine manufacturer. So they said, yeah, we know you're bringing Cadillac, but we don't want you. We just want Cadillac. Screw you. And then Cadillac had to go out of the way and say, look, it's either both of us or nothing. You either bring Andretti in with us or we ain't joining because we want to be with an American team. So props to Cadillac for having some balls. That's awesome. I hope they keep flipping the bird to F1 and bully their way in the good old-fashioned American way. Just like we bullied our way into becoming a nation. Let's bully our way into F1. I know Haas exists. They're an American F1 team. But losing is not American, okay? Okay? I love Haas to death. They're another one of my teams that do not contribute to my mental health in any kind of positive fashion most of the time, okay? If they just get a top 10, it's like they won a Super Bowl. They don't count, okay? They don't count for now. If Andretti comes in, I'm sorry. Like, Andretti is in this case, in regards to American F1 teams, they're the guy she told you not to worry about. Okay. Anywho, lastly, there was the IndyCar cheating scandal with Team Penske, with all 3 of their drivers having a push to pass violation. For those of y'all that don't know, just like there's DRS in F1 in IndyCar, there's push to pass, in which each driver in road course races gets 200 seconds allowed for them to push the button and activate their temporary turbocharger to help them assist with passing amongst the dirty air problems in most open wheel cars nowadays with how fast they go. Essentially, all three drivers were found that there was a software issue in their cars that allowed them to use push to pass on restarts before they crossed the alternate start finish line. Scott McLaughlin was shown to have pressed it in the opening round, along with Joseph Newgarden. Joseph Newgarden had the most amount of seconds used illegally. Scott McLaughlin had just a couple. Will Power had the same software issue, but somehow never did it. So he was given a very minor penalty. McLaughlin was given a 10 position penalty from that, and Joseph Newgarden was stripped of his win over it. Newgarden held a huge press conference apologizing and trying to explain the issue, because it wasn't just the fact there was a software issue. That's one thing, but there was all kinds of issues in how that happened in the first place, because apparently from Newgarden's perspective, the team themselves had Newgarden convinced that basically from testing that was in thermal, there was at the thermal club where they do their preseason testing. In the thermal Grand Prix they did in between rounds 1 and 2, you were allowed to use push to pass on restarts. And somehow Newgarden is claiming that the two team in particular, so just his team, were convinced that there was a rule change and that you were allowed to do to use push to pass on restarts, to the point that apparently he said to be on record on radio reminding his team, hey, please remind me that I can use push to pass on restarts. Like genuinely convinced that it was legal, not that they were trying to hide away from it. They found out, the investigation found this out 2 weeks after round 1. So after the conclusion of the Long Beach Grand Prix, it was huge, massive news for the sport to have him Newgarden disqualified and taken away from the lead of the series. So yeah, personally, if you look at Joseph Newgarden, he's not only one of the cleanest racers on track, but he's a 2-time IndyCar champion. He has no reason to get involved in any kind of cheating scandal. Neither do the rest of these drivers. On a technical perspective, the software issue that allowed them to do this in the first place was because they took an older copy of the software in testing and did not go and rewrite the code to make the adjustments. Somehow that happened. Just an older version of software was used, is what they claim and what was proven, I believe. In regards to Newgarden in particular, since he used it the most and it was really the most scrutinized, like I said, I know I'm biased because heck, I'm wearing his jersey right now. If you look at Newgarden's career, anyone who's raced him will say he's the cleanest guy on track. He's one of the most honest people. He's kind of been the golden boy for this season, for this series for a while. Super, super nice dude. Very, very professional. Even though his story is not very believable in regards to this, that's just a lot of coincidences. If you go and listen to the press conference, I could understand how that could be a 1 million shot that actually lands. I just don't. I think in this case, he was more ignorant than actually malintent. I think he was 100% ignorant. I do think there could be the people internally, and there was multiple members of his race team strategists were suspended internally by their own boss, Roger Penske. So I think there might have been a potential for foul play within his team, but I don't think Newgarden would be maliciously trying to cheat. I do think he was ridiculously ignorant in that there's no way you could be there's no, it's unacceptable for you to be that unaware, but I don't think there was malintent. That's just personal, no bias, take it with a grain of salt because it's coming from me. But yeah, that definitely was huge news for IndyCar. Wrapping up the rest of the news, going back to F1, Hulkenberg was announced to be joining Kick Sauber, which will eventually be Audi in 2026. He will be leaving Haas to join Kick Sauber in 2025, leaving the door open for Haas to promote and sign Ollie Behrman to their F1 team. And I don't know what they're going to do with Kevin Magnussen. They may keep him for another year to have a veteran combo, or maybe go after someone else. Who knows? But this does also mean that between Guan Yu Zhou and Valtteri Bottas, somebody's leaving, because there's only 2 spots. So that'll be interesting. We still don't know where Carlos Sainz is going to land. There was news that he was in talks with Red Bull and Mercedes. We'll see if anything lands there. Could be a potential if Red Bull want to step away from Perez, which is widely rumored. Yeah, that kind of wraps up the last minute news segment there. Have you got anything else to add? I know I've been monologuing a lot the last half hour.
That's fine. Man's got a lot to say. Let him talk, you know? Yeah, no, I think thumbs up.
Okay. Well, I'll close with a question to you over this. Of all of the races we've got going on next weekend, which one are you looking forward to the most to watch? You got opening round of motocross. You got Monaco. You've got the Indy 500. You got the Coke 600. That's all I know about.
Man, that's a really tough one. I would have to say, okay, the one that I care the least about is the Coke 600. Very sorry, NASCAR. Just not that interesting.
Yep.
It is not a super interesting NASCAR race in general. Plus, not super into NASCAR.
It's got to be Daytona for me. Daytona, Talladega, Bristol, the
Those get
historic
exciting.
coveted tracks. Yeah.
What's the one they do a dirt race?
Bristol. They're not doing dirt this year though. They're just doing a regular concrete night race, which I was kind of just I kind of wanted to see him keep it, but whatever.
Whatever. Okay.
Bristol's always great though.
Yeah. Okay, so that's the bottom of the barrel for me.
Mm-hmm.
I gotta say, dude, it's really close top 3 right now because I'm really excited to be getting into IndyCar a little bit. So that's exciting. Obviously, coming off of the last couple of weeks of Formula One, this is going to be great with going into Monaco. And, dude, motocross opening round, I mean, 250s are going to be absolutely incredible. 450 is going to be
huge question mark.
We'll see. Yeah, we'll see. Yeah.
Tune into our next episode in 24 hours to hear that preview, by the way.
Yeah, I would say probably Monaco because no, I'm going to go IndyCar. I think that has the most likelihood to be a highly contested, fun to watch race.
Yep.
That's my story and I'm sticking to it.
Okay. I mean, I agree with you. For me, it's it's kind of that same order. I would just flip flop in regards to just I'm so excited for the parity of motocross as well. So I would go Indy 500, motocross opening weekend, and then Monaco. It's not that close. I mean, sorry, it is very close between those three, and then it's not that close from 3 to 4. NASCAR is what we're going to be doing after we're done barbecuing and we're hitting a food coma in the pool. We're going to be putting that on and just floating around on Sunday because we're doing a big barbecue.
We'll tune in for the last 3 laps.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Once we come out of our food
everybody starts, whenever we see, what do they do safety car? They do safety car in NASCAR?
They'll do cautions. Yeah.
Okay, so we have notifications turned on the phone for when a caution comes out. We run over, rewind to see what the wreck was. Yep. And
then, you won't have to rewind because while the caution's going on, they're going to show the wreck about 15 times. Yeah. High definition slow motion. Doesn't matter if someone's about to die. Like they're going to. That's the main. Yeah. It's NASCAR, baby. Yeah. So that'll be a lot of fun. And like I said, tune in. Hopefully I'll have it uploaded within 24 to 40 hours of this one hitting for our motocross preview. Going to be a lot to dive into in previewing that. So stay tuned. And hope you guys enjoy this episode. We'll catch you guys next time.
Deuces.